Data transmission from one place to another is crucial for establishing that reliable network. On the data entry devices, that is going to allow the executive to add, to modify, and get the information that he needs. The suppliers, the vendors, the employees, every single person is waiting for that crucial data to be processed. So the process of building an expert system on knowledge engineering, and it's done by knowledge engineers altogether. Good morning and welcome to the second session, Unit 2, 4th semester BBA, Information Technology for Business, where we're going to see subsystems of information system. In the previous sessions, we have been talking about the various subsystems, but today we're going to talk about executive and the expert system. So let us start with a small case study here. Now, let's say that this is a question that is looking at you. You have been now elevated to the position of a chief executive officer of the organizations. In purview, holding about 35 locations are going to report to you, out of which there are 12 countries, 20,000 employees. So how do you keep track of this organization? The very moment this question comes up to your mind, just think for a second. Being a CEO of a company, managing 20,000 employees across 12 locations and so many people reporting on to you is not going to be that easy. You definitely need a system. You need an assistance through which you can make decisions quickly and also correctly. So that's why this entire process is very, very important for us. So as we keep talking about this, we need to start understanding the operation level. So what's the first thing that we have in place? Executive information system. What are the components? The first one is the hardware that we are going to talk about. The executive must first put into the executive's needs must be defined before the hardware can be selected. The basic hardware needed for the typical EIS is the data entry services, which allow the executives to add, modify, and update, which means to say that these are the components that needs to be first in place, that needs to be first built in before we start modulating the things. So coming back, we need to understand why the hardware gets selected, and the hardware is the most important part as we are talking about, because typically every executive information system is dependent on the data entry devices that is going to allow the executive to add, to modify, and get the information that he needs. Followed by which the central processing unit, which is the kernel because it controls other computer system components. Now the data storage, which is going to accumulate all the important data, and it's going to perform a function based on the output information that's going to be given. So the output devices will help to read the output. Now this is the basic ideology of an executive system that we are looking into it. As we proceed further, we have to get into the most important part called as the software. Why is software important and why do we need to look into it? Software involved is basically the decisions are being made using the software. So what happens is that the scalability of software is very important. As the organizations start growing, the decisions also become complex. Now, when you're talking about organization which employs lakhs of people, and there are multiple decisions to be taken within a fraction of time, the software should be able to take the load, should be in such a way that the decision should be made effective enough so that the interfaces are able to match and we are able to read it. So whatever happens, the software should be able to match the business need at any given point of time. Now let's move further. The basic software includes 4 components, that is a text-based software, multiple databases that are residing there, the graphical aids that we are talking about that helps the volume of text and statistics, the model base that refers to logical, computational, analytical models that we are talking about, an executive system which is a most viable option if it can be procured at the most competitive rate. So what happens here is that when we talk about the software, we're going to talk about these components. One is a text base. Two, the multiple databases that are residing there. Next, we're going to talk about those graphic aids, because these days, the pictorial representation of a decision of a system will be much more interesting rather than just the normal factor altogether. So somewhere down the lane, if you could get a system that could actually make things even more interesting, that could even give us that model to understand what kind of interpretations are there. So you need to have a better computational software. You need to have a better system through which we can do this. Followed by which, user interface. And EIS needs to pull out the relevant data for decision makers. Hence, the user interface is very, very important. Several types of interfaces include reporting engine, menu-driven, command language, natural language, input and output. Of late, the most interesting part of computer is that it has started to understand you. So language is not going to be a barrier anymore. Trust me. What is going to be a barrier, a question mark here, is that moment you start giving the input, the computer should be able to recognize and give the correct output, which means the time that is required to understand the input and take it forward is going to be quite challenging, quite complicated here. So what is very much needed is that you need to have a flow. You need to have a system which is able to understand that complex situation, interpret it, and give out the information as soon as possible. Now, the next one is the telecommunication. With converging technologies and geographies all across the globe, we need to have telecommunication systems on par, which means to say that we are going to have the state-of-the-art technology through which we can connect to all the offices across the globe, and the decisions would be made simultaneously. So I don't mean to say here that we are just going to rely on the network speed alone, but I'm going to talk about the network availability, the scalability, the precision, and the connection that we are going to talk about. So at some point of time, please understand that the network communication skills are very, very important. Suppose we want to get a presentation done at some client office located, let's say, in the Middle East or in the East Asia. That means to say that the network should be ready enough to get that particular data arranged there, and it should go online. Now, what I'm trying to talk about here is the seamless integration of technology across all the offices, and that will make the big difference altogether. So data transmission from one place to another is crucial for establishing that reliable network. Let's move further. IBM claims that there are nearly 2.5 quintillion type bytes of data generated every day. So here we need something as a filtering mechanism for segregating the information that's most vital to the organization for effective decision making. Now, if IBM is going to come up with this data, that means to say that the world is completely processed with the amount of data that we're talking about. That's a humongous amount that we are talking about. And today, when you look into your dashboard, you're going to have 101 options looking at you, trying to talk about what kind of data, what needs to be processed, and what needs to be talked about in terms of making the decision. So when you talk about those executive or the strategic data, the real-time data processing and getting your answers on time makes it very, very important. So you need to identify the opportunities for expansion and see areas of improvement. Now, let's say that a telecom company finds that there is an opportunity for us to start getting into cybersecurity solutions or data storage solutions or some, telecommunication storage or infrastructure situation solutions. We can probably start getting into those things. Why? Because this is providing an opportunity for us to think further, to expand further, and to grow. Moving further, what are the advantages of EIS? It's a Monday morning, the weekend is past, so that's exactly how we start here. Let's have a look into it. Moment you log into your office on a Monday morning and you open up your system, you would see hundreds of data sheets flashing across your screen. You have your emails popping up, you have your spreadsheets open, but then what is more crucial is that your manager is waiting for your call, which means you need to give that decision immediately. Your boss needs to know whether to take that call or not, which means the suppliers, the vendors, the employees, every single person is waiting for that crucial data to be processed. So that's exactly today. I would say that for every executive across the globe, the most important thing is that are you able to take a decision at the flash of a second? at that moment, at that verification time. Why? Because if you're not able to get it, then that means we are not working at the speed what we are expecting altogether. Now, the most important thing here is that with a click of that mouse, moment the information pops up before you, that's how you're going to take it forward, and that's how the people outside are waiting for you in terms of spreading the information. Now, the various advantage, first thing is that it provides a very simplified platform. Yes, we do agree, because we are able to see everything in one simple go. Executives can view the gross margins, mark down all the season, category, everything that has been provided. Management can monitor critical variables, checkouts, visitor traffic, conversion rate, sales, inventory contribution, everything is done within that. So that means to say that this is giving me an extremely good conversion rates as we are talking about. This is fantastic for each one of us to think, to proceed. Similarly, we are talking about something called as the expert systems. So there are two important things as we are talking about. One is the primary part called as a knowledge base. The other one is called as a reasoning engine. The knowledge base consists of both factual and judgmental knowledge. The reasoning base uses inference to solve problems, basically using the if-then decision chain. So the process of building an expert system on knowledge engineering, and it's done by knowledge engineers altogether. So first of all, let's try to understand what is an expert system. Now, why do you even rely on an expert system? There are some times where you want the answer, the solutions to be specific, to be up to the mark, which means to say that you cannot rely on a generalist, you cannot rely on systems which would be giving you all sorts of data. We are looking in for systems that would give us the exact data, the exact modulation, which means you need to have specific knowledge. You need to have references taken from all walks of life, all executive factors, so that you are able to do it. So that's why expert systems comes into position. So you have a knowledge base and you have a reasoning base. When you combine these two, the expert system starts working. Followed by IBM standardizes prices after sales services. Why? Because when you start doing this, an installation factor, you would start seeing in this case study, after IBM started standardizing its procedure installation, the prices base for negotiation among customers and the field representative was there. While each customer had a different ducting and wiring, flooring estimates would vary, consistent bidding was a major problem. So what happened? We started building in an expert system which will have a common knowledge base, which would have a user interface through which we will be able to connect. We would be able to provide you graphics. We would be able to tell you how exactly the system is working, how you need to work, what are all the different components. An inference engine, which is going to determine the rule, determine the questions to be asked. It is going to be indicative order. So it's going to tell exactly what is the question, what kind of answers are we looking for. Next, we have a backward chaining system, a goal-driven system that comes into picture, which is very, very important in the modern thing. Why? Because this will actually help you to understand how is the outcome working. A system which works backwards to collect the evidence that would support this conclusion. The system simply gathers the facts, evidences to reach an outcome. It's a largely used for diagnosis. I'm basically trying to talk about all the classification and the complexity that it is going through, which is very, very important in the modern days, because that is going to give us the real factors, how things are moving up in terms of the sizing factors. As we go up, an expert system would also capture the expertise of group of experts in a computer-based information system. However, on the contrary, the ES can compute faster than the human expert itself. This is because, very simple, it's program intelligence and the processing ability of the computing. The system is reliable with higher accuracy and lower rate of error. So an expert system can give much more accurate results than what we have expected, and there can be a low rate of error, which makes the systems even more reliable. The advantages: integrating information, specialized displays, rapid development which is happening, exception reporting, and strategic sales advantage. So you can see here in the expert system, you are able to integrate all sort of information. You're able to give all those specific displays. It's a faster scalability that we are talking about. You have excellent reporting, which means every corner, any part of the system can come into it. It has a strategic sales advantage. That is very, very important as we are talking about. And the most important thing is that Whether you look into manufacturing, marketing, financial or customer care support, it is available for you. So which means to say that the application is quite interesting for each one of us to know. And this is very, very important. Why? Because EIS is a trend. It is moving from every single part as far as possible. Applications can start with financial decision making. Yes, you are there. Knowledge publishing on reports, process monitoring, design and manufacturing, planning and scheduling, and of course, not to forget, configuration of manufactured objects for the sub-assembly. So this is definitely something which can the automotive company, components manufacturing, everybody can look into it in terms of development. Now, the successful implementation, we'll take the case of Philips at 66, where they were able to do it. Now, in 1987, Philips faced a problem with the pricing of petroleum products, as a result of which the company-wide, there was a complete reorganization. We had to go with the expert system and EIS, through which they were able to standardize the entire model, including the pricing and other activities, which has helped them to rebuild the organization. And today, Philips is able to do a fantastic job because of the implementation of expert systems. At the end of the day, I would like to say that this is a platform that is extended, that has been created or rather facilitated to provide an easy access to both internal and external information for the organization so that the strategic goals of the organization are met. Now, this has the drill down capacities to go down to the last level, find out the root cause analysis and give you the best results as far as possible. And that's why reliance on EIS and expert system is mandatory for organization. With this, I come to the end of today's session. I hope and believe that you would have understood all the facts and figures that I've spoken about EIS and ES, which is very helpful for you both in terms of practical as well as in the theoretical walk of life. In the upcoming session, we are going to talk about database management systems, which is going to be very interesting. But until then, stay tuned, stay blessed. Thank you once again for joining me today on the wonderful session. You have a great day ahead.